So, since we're waiting for 1 week to pass anyway to get, our money and shit, why don't we read some books? We should have 30 books to read. As you can see, 1 out of 30. So, I somehow don't predict there being any more sets of books that we'll need to read ever again, because we bought out everything we hadn't read yet. So, let's see what we can find here. I don't expect anything interesting, though. The Civil War in Toussaint. The year 781 marked the final end of Elven rule in Toussaint, the closing of an era that had lasted over 1,500 years. The elves abandoned their ivory cities and left for the mountains, taking with them all that they could and destroying everything else. Whatever they could not take and did not manage to demolish or burn, they cursed. The last elven sovereign, Divethach, hundreds of years old yet fair as a youth, was defeated. Weeping over the slain army of his forever young brothers and sisters, he agreed to pay homage to Ludovic, the first human king of Toussaint, who, though young, was as shrunken and ugly as the night after Samhain. Putting on no end of airs and graces, Ludovic boasted, "Look, the proud elf shall bow down before me and kiss my royal feet with humility." To degrade Divethach even further, Ludovic decided the homage should take place in the Elf King's barely abandoned palace. The throne on which Ludovic now boldly lounged bore still smouldering marks from the fire set by the elves, who had sought to burn the whole palace down as they left. So the proud Elven King bowed down before the human king and offered him a sacrifice of bread and wine, as well as the sword and shield, spewing out merciless mockery all the while. Ludovic received this homage, then immediately ordered his guards drag Divethach beyond the palace gates and throw him down the stairs as if he were a beggar. Witnesses claimed the proud elf remained calm throughout the whole event. But when left alone, Divethach wiped the blood off his face, which appeared out of nowhere apparently. I guess he really hit those stairs real hard in there. And vowed cruel revenge on the king. Revenge which would come from stone as cold as the king's heart. Yet these ominous words bore no fruit. For in the year 782, before the homage was renewed, Divethach drew his last breath alongside his remaining soldiers when the Toussaintois decided to celebrate the anniversary of the surrender of the Elven Sovereign with a pogrom of non-humans on the slopes of Mount Gorgon. Few survived. I mean, this doesn't sound like a civil war, more like a... what do they call those things? Holocausts? Yeah, there you go. The Ducal Chronicle, 2nd Amended Edition. Ducal Chronicle, tome 56, right? Lamas Serene, 1268. Excerpts. 2nd edition, amended. Oh, man, that's fine. It's in the title, you don't have to copy-paste it there. I wonder if they literally looked at like some ancient scripture where some douchebag like titles the scripture that it's the thing 2nd Amended Edition, and then in the thing also writes 2nd Amended Edition. I mean, technically there's some utility there, but still, come on. In the month preceding the celebrations surrounding the Festival of the Vat, the Ducal couple and delegation of notables embarked on a neighborly visit to the court of Queen Calanthe of Sintra. The visit had both a social and a political dimension, for the Duchess was hoping Queen Calanthe would follow the dictates of international protocol and repay with a visit of her own, preferably, okay, during the above-mentioned festival, thus gracing the celebration with her royal presence. You could have just invited her. The ducal couple was accompanied by their daughter, Anarieta. It is worth mentioning here that the infant is sprouting like a beanpole, and it shall not belong Oh my goodness, who wrote this? You're gonna need more than fucking 2 amended editions. You need a 3rd one to fix these errors. Jesus. And before it will be necessary to find her a husband, time will surely add to her charms. As for character and imagination, she's not lacking either quality in the least. Yeah, but this is old shit. So, see how useless this is? By now she must be old or dead. Or both. And, well, Witcher can't bank dead things. At least in canon. Game canon, that is. The Last Basilisk of its Kind. A Study in Ecology by Boris de Salvares. Based on my observations, I have concluded all species, be they plant, animal, or even insect, are inextricably intertwined with one another. It is no mere coincidence the feeling of the beech woods and the vanishing of the rose, who in them once dwelled, led to the disappearance of the sterling basilisk as well. The principle even holds true for ladybirds. For the betterment of learning, I conducted the following experiment. I eradicated all the aphids in the palace cabbage patch, using a lye solution. Within a few weeks, all of the ladybirds once present in that patch, and there were hundreds, migrated to a neighboring field. A simple experiment, yet it gave incontrovertible proof of my hypothesis. Only if you then had someone else reproduce it. Gotta eliminate those variables, man. But at least we'll learn something about ladybugs. Right? It was ladybugs, yes. Ladybirds. Look, same thing, it's just a bird instead of bug. Kikimores, truths and myths about the insidious insectoids. Observation has shown that kikimores are the most organized and hierarchical of the post-conjunction insectoids. Their workers follow the orders of warriors. They're all subjects of the queen, which seems to control the behavior of all members of the swarm, even though she remains hidden deep in the ground. Considering the small size of the species' cerebral ganglia, which functions as a brain, one may hypothesize that kikimores possess a sort of a hive mind, making them similar to ants. You see, I had already read it. This game is very immersive. I had read that book, but I actually hadn't actually read that book, and the game knew somehow. That's why I didn't add to the bestiary. That makes sense. See, I mistook catacans and kikimores back in one of the previous episodes. Said, kikimores must be the vampires. No, it was catacans. God damn it. Before we sink our teeth, so to speak, into our analysis of the catacan, the creature to whom the present work is dedicated, by way of introduction, let me present to our less experienced readers what exactly vampires are, and what they're not. To our great displeasure, a great many myths concerning these creatures have arisen over the years. For example, that they sparkle in the frickin' sun. The popular tales about them have served only to make popular superstitions and falsehoods. In the common folk's imagination, vampires are dead men and women risen from their graves, wraiths driven by an unquenchable thirst for warm blood. Yet nothing could be further from the truth. These creatures first came to be on another world, arrived now centuries ago, and have since learned to live among men and have evolved at our side. The widespread belief that vampires must drink human blood in order to survive is flat out wrong. Though they do in fact often partake of our vital fluid, for human blood affects their physiology as alcohol does ours. A vampire's bite does not turn its victim into a vampire, a state of affairs which would in fact be counter to logic, for it would mean the world would soon fill with vampires as they multiply at an exponential rate. Running water presents no barrier to vampires, not even if it's cold. All vampires are immune to the forces of both heat and cold. Now for the most important matter, vampires have learned to live in the light of our sun, which is not harmful to them in the least, so they absolutely never shimmer or glisten when struck with the sun's rays. So I didn't even need to add that. They know. Here I am trying to out-meme the game. The game knows what it's doing. We already knew everything about catacans, I guess. The Fall of Hubert Blast. Duchess Adamata. Hubert served as a knight-errant for many years in vows were his greatest delight. He swore to do things so grand they curdled blood of other knights. The Duchess finally recognized his courage and not only awarded him with an honorary title but also granted him land. Hubert thus had a place of his own on which to settle down and wait till his time came with dignity. He could find himself a wife, sire some descendants, as befits every self-respecting hero. Unfortunately, once he had lain down his sword and shield, Baronet Blast began to seek other diversions, and so he indulged in games of card and dice, and at times even bet on dogfights. Then one day, when fortune abandoned him, he decided to bet not 1 or 2 gold pouches, but in fact his family's entire estate, and he lost everything. To add to this already unhappy state of affairs, Hubert Blast was not one to take defeat lightly, flew into a fit of blind passion, donned his armor, and enlisted at once. Fortune, alas, smiled no more favorably upon him at war than it did at play, and an arrow found its way to Hubert's leg. Then he died of gangrene. Wow. This story sucks. A code duello. Presented below is a set of rules for dueling which every self-respecting gentleman should follow. Why is it starting in the middle? Oh, we're just randomly gonna skip that. Oh, what the hell? We actually skipped a bunch because this decided to start here. It was actually about... I was wondering why did it start so oddly. Like we're reading a fucking play that's like something that she says or something? What the hell? Anyway, for dueling, which every self-respecting gentleman should follow, although their nature is that of an honorable agreement, failure to respect them shall bring infamy and shame to the name of the dueler and exclude him from all respectable social circles. This code applies throughout the whole of the Duchy of the Saint. Course of the duel. The parties present their seconds. Each of the parties is entitled to 1 second. The parties decide whether the duel ends when first blood has been drawn or when one of the parties surrenders. Let it be remembered that in Toussaint, by order of Her Knight and Highness, duels fought the last blood are punishable by immediate imprisonment. I mean, what good is it to imprison a guy who's already drawn last blood, eh? You get one of them, but not both of them. It's not good enough. The challenge party selects the weapons for the duel. The challenger is obliged to accept the choice of the challenge party. The parties duel according to the rules agreed upon. The seconds ensure proper course of the duel. When the duel is over, the seconds announce the winner and the loser. It is strictly forbidden to put forth any claims, blood revenge included, based upon defeat in the duel. The duel is commonly regarded as an instance putting a definite end to the dispute. I should go around challenging everyone to duels, is what this book is saying. I mean, as pride cometh before the fall, they say, but be it fists, swords, or any other weaponry, I'm sure Geralt can handle it. The Ducal Chronicle, 1st edition. Ducal Chronicle, Tome 56, Lamas, Wien, 1268, excerpts. So this is the first edition. We had somewhere around here was the second edition. Yeah, second amended edition. So this is the original nonsense. In the month preceding the celebrations surrounding the Festival of the Vat, the ducal couple and delegation of notables embarked on a neighborly visit to the court of Queen Calanthe of Sintra. The visit had both a social and a political dimension, for the Duchess was hoping Queen Calanthe would follow the dictates of international protocol and repay with a visit of her own, preferably during the above-mentioned festival, thus gracing the celebration with her royal presence. So far as the same, the ducal couple was accompanied by both daughters, Siana and Anarita. So Siana was deleted from history, I see. It is worth mentioning here that both infants are sprouting like beanpoles, and it shall not be long before it will be necessary to find them husbands. In the case of the elder daughter, Siana, this should not brew a problem, as suitors will flock from all over the civilized world for the chance to be husband to the future Duchess, especially when they see her portrait, which will not even require much embellishment. Things are somewhat different in the case of young Anarita, who is overly thin and furthermore auburn-haired. The hope remains, however, that time will add to her charms. As for character and imagination, neither girl is lacking in either quality in the least. Interesting, so Siana was written out of history, and Henrietta originally was supposed to be thin and apparently ugly for the standards of this land. Bestiary. You what, mate? Or is it that you add the bestiary when I click on it? I guess that makes more sense, right? I thought that it was when you click it off, but this makes sense too. The so-called giant centipedes are my only comfort in exile. Dearly have I paid for my wrongs, being exiled from the beautiful deserts and steppes of Afir to this hideous green country where all the scents and flavors are so intense they make me sick. Fills my heart with sorrow and regret. My only comfort seems to be a small colony of scolopendros, or more scientifically speaking, scolopendromorphs, here referred to as giant centipedes, living in the vicinity of my hut. These wonderful creatures, the sight of which reminds me of home, have most likely chosen this area to settle in because of the presence of shale moss, whose droppings constitute the food of smaller animals, which in turn are consumed by scolopendros. Sometimes I sneak up on them when they are feeding and admire their hooked limbs, mandibles, so sturdy, they seem made of iron. The chitinous thoraces, shiny enough to let one gaze upon one's reflection. He got a little bit excited there towards the end. A fire and stone. Sphera Mundi is divided, or Mundai probably. Sphera Mundi is divided into 4 elemental planes. The plane of earth, water, air, and fire. Earth and water together form our planet, around which circulates air. Above air stretches the ether, fiery air. Or in short, fire. Past fire lie the subtle sidereal heavens, known collectively as firmamentum, which are of a spherical nature. This is where the erratica sidera, drifting stars, and fixa sidera, fixed stars, reside. The elemental planes are inhabited by creatures which can be summoned by use of magic. They are gnomes, sylphs, salamanders, and ondinates. No idea what that one is. All of which belong to the category commonly known as elementia. Elementum in the singular. Salamanders are fire, sylphs are air, gnomes are earth, so ondinates must be water. You mean like mermaids and shit, maybe that's what they mean. Who knows. Water elementals are weird anyway. Journal of Research into Archospores. A1. I have stumbled upon an extremely curious species, the venomous Archospore. So far, I have managed to distinguish 3 of its varieties, distinguished by colors. Green, the most common, yellow, and finally black, which not only exhibit the most aggression, but also show the extraordinary ability to pollinate plants near instantaneously. Day 5. My research into Archospores continues. I think I have reached a point where observation is no longer enough to bring satisfying results. The species attacks mainly using a mandible located in the center of its flower. Although when highly threatened, it may also spit toxic fluid. I was also able to discover Archospores are particularly sensitive to fire, which may prove a useful piece of information regarding how to neutralize them if necessary. Day 6. I have made up my mind. Tomorrow I shall try to obtain a sample of the fluid. I have already begun preparations. And you can guess how that went. The Wondrous World of Insectoids, a supplement. Let it be known, there exists no being more wondrous than the giant centipede. Verily I say unto you, blind is he who fails to see their evolutionary advantage over all other species. After all, is there not a creature so perfectly adjusted to living under the ground as well as on top of it? Another being able to pelt through passages invisible to the naked eye and construct stunning subterranean cities. Well, you could try the dwarves, I guess. Verily I say unto you, let us bow before the divinity of 1,000 limbs before it is too late. Let us shelter behind the chitin thorax, on which the swords of our enemies shall break. Let us bring nourishment for the great mandible. Let us devote ourselves to these wonderful giants, these titanic insectoids, these loud noises inside the fucking... these colopendromorphs, scientifically speaking, of course. Let us resemble Shelmas, the humble servants who make it possible for this grand species to become even stronger and even greater. Our toil shall be rewarded, I promise you this. Praise the great mandible. What is this? The Adventures of Spiky and a White called Franconi. Once upon a time, in a small mound near Vermentino Vineyard, there lived a white named Franconi. Amiable by nature, he spent his days in the mound, cooking various kinds of soups. Not that he was particularly fond of soups, it was his beloved pet, a barghest named Spiky, that slurped them up greedily. And so they sat there, side by side, Franconi the white and Spiky the barghest, cooking soups made of decaying bones, withered weeds, and if they managed to swipe some metal, nails, their favorite delicacy. One day, Franconi heard 2 gravediggers talk about a certain man of wealth who kept various kinds of cheese in his cellar. A cheese soup sounded like a delectable treat to Franconi, so he snuck into the noble's cellar and stole the biggest cheese wheel there ever was. When he got home, Franconi started slowly melting the cheese in his favorite pot. The stench was so awful, Spiky ran off and refused to go back to the mound. To add to already terrible state of things, the smell of cheese permeated everything. So Spiky and Franconi had to pack their things and move. The moral of the story is simple. If you are cooking a cheese soup, make sure the cheese you chose is not blue. I'm sorry, what? What do you mean blue? You never said he brought a blue cheese. Oh my goodness. Pangrot's amazing anti-fledder stratagem. Fledders are a vile and unsophisticated variety of a vampire. They are unable to run properly, cannot bear direct sunlight, and are generally none too wise. Some fledders hunt alone, whereas others prefer to attack in groups. Perhaps it is a matter of instinct. Having sensed blood, they assess the size of the victim and, if necessary, summon their kin. The only strong suit of these leeches is their ability to leap towards a potential victim. Fighting a flood is no different than fighting any other kind of bloodsucker. Apart from the obvious means such as garlic, buckthorn, and sunlight, a hunter should stock up on silver. A lit torch may prove helpful as well. God, these books are gonna kill me, dude. We're almost halfway through and it's been half an hour, Jesus. Slithers through the ages. For many years, it was erroneously believed lizards were simply wyverns in their highest stage of development. One scholar, whose completion of an academic course of study must have been the result of no small miracle, heatedly defended this point of view in a scientific work, whose title I shall mercifully withhold. His main line of reasoning was an absurd and completely off the mark parallel drawn between the developmental cycles of the lizard and Pieris brassicae, whatever the hell that would be, man, also known as cabbage butterfly. Okay, a lizard, claimed the author, is nothing but a fully mature wyvern that has developed fire glands. Rubbish. Let it be known once and for all that Charles von Lynn is a filthy fopdoodle and an uneducated knucklehead. A sly lizard is not by any means the same beast as a wyvern. I wonder which side does Geralt take? It's like, I wonder, is it different? Is it the same? I mean, I've killed one before. I guess for Geralt there's no real big difference, huh? Natural Born Killers, a study of Garcanes. Garcanes are commonly described as lesser vampires. Do not be misled by this terminology, however, for they are extremely dangerous and devious creatures which men stand no chance of defeating even when greatly outnumbering the beasts. Garcanes possess a highly developed sense of smell. Once they are on your track, you are as good as that. They have a special taste for adolescents and children, hence the belief that this vampire seeks out only virgins. There's a grain of truth in that, yet it is not a matter of sexual purity, but of the level of blood pollution. The younger, the healthier the victim, the tastier tidbit it makes for a Garcane. Makes sense to me. Oh, finally no more bestiary. But then again, that just means there's random stories. Oh no. Guide to the Vineyards of Descent, Volume 2, The Pleasure Valley. For those who find the wines of the Sans Retour Valley too dull, I strongly recommend the lesser known but still outstanding brands produced in the Pleasure Valley. Let us start with the amazing Côte de Pleasure, produced at the Pomerol Vineyard. I particularly recommend the 60 to 63 vintages, with their distinctively rich flavor. Looking elsewhere, the nearby Zurbaran of Castle offers the dry Castel de Neuf, whereas Naragus and Sancerre, located in the northern parts of Descent, specialize in red wines and jointly produce and export the wine known in the north as Descent Red. Exquisite rose wine could once be found at Castel d'Acier, but ever since its owner tragically passed away, the vineyard has fallen into decay. I think that's the one I got, but I'm not sure. I can only guess. There were people there, but I don't think they were there for vineyard's sake. Otherwise it wouldn't have been in such disrepair, right? That makes sense. Alps. Bruxelles' dangerous cousins. In the course of my research into Bruxelles, I have stumbled upon certain inconsistencies that in no way correspond with what we already know about these dangerous vampires. My investigations have revealed that these seemingly erroneous accounts were in fact describing an Alp, not a Bruxa. It is an extraordinary discovery, a true milestone in the classification of these monsters. Even though legends tell of these vampires turning into pitch-black hounds or venomous toads, personally I do not believe an Alp is capable of such polymorphy. However, it is almost certain that similarly to a bruxa, an ARP may transform itself into a beautiful woman. This ability allows the species to blend seamlessly into crowds. To think that I may have passed such a monster completely unawares. Fascinating. One of the fundamental differences between ARPs and bruxa is their fighting style, when in the form of a vampire. ARPs also possess the ability to turn into fog, which allow them to move noiselessly and attack by surprise. Most likely this is the root of the name common folk have given them. Fleetlings. I mean, shit. That bruxa also could turn into fog. Maybe it was an ARP after all. Hellhounds, harbingers of the end. Some monsters are born out of necessity, not because they are cruel, but because they have to defend themselves. For them, it's hunt or be hunted. Others are simply a mistake of nature, beasts brought to life by an evolutionary hiccup, so to speak. With these sorts of monsters, we are able to fight. But there are also monsters born of sin. Wherever there's cruelty and envy, wherever earth has been drenched in blood and rocks, soaked in suffering, there the hellhounds have their home. And as cruelty spreads, so too shall these monsters. They are the reflection of us, and to defeat them would mean to defeat ourselves. All that is left is to wait until we are torn to shreds by hordes of these demonic dogs. What's wrong with this guy? Didn't even tell anything useful about it, other than the sin part, I guess, but whatever. Master Pharamon's thoughts on elven architecture. Nowhere else in the world can one find better preserved relics of the gloried days of the Ancient Shade. Naturally, by the entire world did I in fact mean the areas that have entered man's jurisdiction. The Sans architecture obviously could not hold a candle to the wonders of Dol Blethana. That is in no way meant to detract from the glory of the ruins and terms, the old amphitheater, or the one-time summer residence to Toussaint's kings. More than any of these, however, it is the palace which captures one's eye with its torn page. Spacious terraces seemingly enclosed by open-work exedras with rows of intricate tracery and pinnacles crowned with spike rockets. One may admire them through legions of ogival windows, the traceries of which are often decorated with the floral ornaments so typical for the culture of the Ancient Shade. This style is especially prominent in its buttresses and niches. Boring shit. Curious customs of the Toussaint Norse. Except, where have all her heroic and selfless knights gone? Are they truly noble, like Ramon of Guichon or Martinus de la Perque, a thing of the past now? Though they maintain a facade of independence and altruism, the knights of errant of Toussaint are they are paid, and by the Duchess herself. So I ask, is that noble? Is that dignified? Should a knight and nobleman, after all, receive payment for his heroic deeds? Is he but a mercenary, or pardon my Nazariri, a ploughing witcher? Shouldn't the tears of joy of a rescued damsel suffice as a reward? I simply cannot understand it. To paraphrase the weighty words of the wise René de Hospitalia, such fools these Toussaint always. Witcher has no comment on this book, because he obviously knows what's going on. If you pay them no money, there's no one to replace the corpses. The tenebrous wilderness of Caed Mecred. In the northwestern region of the Duchy of Toussaint, past the Bleasure River, there lies the forest of Caed Mecred, a druidic sanctuary which, as the result of treaties signed with the duchy's rulers, enjoys full autonomy in its internal affairs. The forest is one of the main reserves of the Beauclair oak, a significant component of the local copperage industry. With ecological balance in the mind and following agreements between the Coopers Guild and the Flaminica, the leader of the circle, oak felling in this forest is currently subject to strict supervision. In 1267, when the Flamenca granted asylum to druids from Curdu in Angron, fighting broke out within the sanctuary. The bandits who tried to escape justice in the forest were burnt alive in wicker hags to set an example. Since then, the borders of Caed Mirkwood have been protected by strong magical barriers, and, to be honest, I would not recommend visiting this region without an invitation from the Flaminica. From Petrin, Felistad guides to Toussaint. So I guess we need to find some druid first. They'll let us in, and we can loot the place. Guide to the Vineyards of Toussaint, Volume 1. Didn't we read Volume 2? Fuck it, whatever. The Sans Ruteau Valley. While in the stunning duchy of Toussaint, one should not forget to visit Castel Ravello, whose grapes lend their vibrant flavor to wines such as Ervelus, Fiorano, Pomino, and the famous Est. Should white wine be one's beverage of choice, I wholeheartedly recommend the excellent offerings of two fiercely competing vineyards, Coronata and Vermentino. If one seeks Beauclair white, popular in the north, one should seek out the Castel Torricella vineyard, which produces and exports it. Unfortunately, a severe economic crisis led to the bankruptcy of several distinguished vineyards, such as Corvo Bianco, known as Quincerben in the elder speech. Oh, the supreme Sapramento, and Tufo. Let us hope each and every one of them finds a passionate new owner who will restore them to their former glory. So I think the Corvo Bianco is the one that's up for sale, and Coronata and Vermentino are those two douchebags who want to get it from me. I am the third party. See, I've considered this. The time we went to buy that vineyard, we didn't actually have a vineyard of our own yet, so maybe now we can go and buy it. That's what we're gonna try after we got these books done. Noble Houses of Toussaint, Volume 57. Sangreal, alternatively Sangreal, literally royal blood, taken directly from the Da Vinci Code or what have you. The legendary line, which some trace back to the first lords of the lands, now lying in Toussaint and northwestern Hackland. The first mention of Wilhelm the Bold, this line's founder, comes from elven manuscripts found during reconstruction of the Beauclair Palace in 1095. Since the source, like all things elven, is unreliable and should not be taken into consideration by historians, the existence of House Sangreal must be considered a mere fable. Salvarez, or Salvarez, D. of the Regulus Platinum Quest. This line takes its name from Salvar the Lame, who was very lame, but he was still made a count in the year 1189 by Duchess Corombata for access to the ducal throne. The De Salvarez line's crest depicts a Regulus Platinum, one of the so-called silver basilisks, whose existence is highly suspect. Its classification as a species considered erroneous by most zoologists. The Richelieu of the Two Towers crest, an ancient line whose founders most likely first settled the lands of present-day Toussaint around the year 984. They waged fierce war against the elves until the 6th decade of the 11th century, and then all of what is now Toussaint fell under human control. How about some more history of the fortresses of Dontain as chronicled by Le Papillon? During a visit to the court of the King of Nazaire, Valtharius de Brony fell madly in love with the king's daughter, the beautiful Hildegard, who was already promised to a prince from Metina. Valtharius, paying no heed to these politically inspired marriage plans, captured the prince's heart, and together they ran off to Toussaint. The prince from Metina, unable to let such an affront pass, followed the star-crossed lovers. Yet Valtharius was renowned for his courage and might, and thus slew his adversary with ease. Then he and his beloved returned to his family estate at Dontine. To his dismay, it turned out his brother Vislavius had nearly led the estate to bankruptcy, while Viltharius had been in Nazair. Viltharius threw his brother into the dungeon, as befits a self-respecting nobleman, and embarked on a nightly expedition. Unfortunately, his young wife, Hildgund, tortured by her solitude, freed Vislavius and became his lover. When Viltharius returned and realized he had been cuckolded, he murdered them both in a fit of passion and despair. Then he sat down and wept. Jesus Christ. This drama. Some star-crossed love that was. Should have left her with a stone dildo. Fucking idiots. Gwent! History! Why is it so much history? Well, I guess what else you gotta put in the books? Gwent! For many a diverting game of cards, for others a noble pursuit, for some a crippling addiction which devours their every coin and every waking moment. These last can be found most frequently among the dwarves, the game's inventors and most passionate devotees. Their devotion extends to Gwent's paraphernalia, its cards most of all, which they craft with great care and skill. In fact, the cards painted by dwarven masters are often considered miniature works of art. In past times, they devoted equal attention to whittling the clubs which contestants once kept at their sides to bash each other about the head with, in the case of an argument. As brawls grew less common, the clubs became implied threats more than used weapons, until eventually falling into disuse and near oblivion. Today, Gwent players can be found almost everywhere from the Skellig Isles, where the game was introduced by the Druid Ermion, to the Northern Realms and the Nilfgaard Empire. In Gwent, the play of cards mimics the dueling of two armies. The playing field is divided into two parts, each split into 3 rows. Nearest to the center stand units who fight at close quarters, behind them archers and other such range attackers, and furthest back machines and creatures used for siege purposes. Both players wield decks made up of a minimum of 22 unit cards and a maximum of 10 special cards, and each must also contain a leader card. The player who wins the toss of a coin, originally the dwarf whose wife has the longest beard, plays first. Each player draws at random 10 cards from his deck, and then is allowed to redraw 2 of these before laying off cards begins. Each round is won by the player who has played cards of the greatest value. The first to achieve 2 victorious rounds wins, meaning a maximum of 3 rounds are played. The winner's prize is agreed upon by the players before each match. Most often the wager is a bounty of coin, or a rare card. The heart of a player's army is the unit cards come in 3 types: close combat, range combat, and siege. Something I have already explained previously, but I thought necessary to mention again, even though this voice is extremely annoying and hard to do. Each such card is assigned a strength rating, and may additionally possess special abilities. There are also special cards which have no strength rating but instead influence the course of the game in other ways. Unit cards depicting famed heroes not only have unusually high strength ratings, but also have the added benefit of ignoring the workings of all special cards. These are the rarest and most coveted of Gwent cards. Most frequently they must be won from top players or purchased at a great price from collectors. The cards in Classic Gwent are divided into 4 factions: the Northern Realms, leader Foltest; the Nilfgaardian Empire, leader Emir Vanham Race; Monsters, leader Eredin Breckglass; the Scoia'tael leader Francesca Findabar. Jeez. I wonder why did these people are not like, well, we gotta change that when the politics change. Foltest's already dead. So is Eredin. And who the fuck knows about Eredin anyway? This fucking game is weird. On sound waves, bats and shelmas. Few know that sound is in fact not just a noise but a wave, just like the waves of the sea striking against the shore. That's why you wouldn't hear any sound in the vacuum. Something like that. And just like them, sound waves strike everything in their path, which causes them to break This particular property of sound is used by some species of animals and monsters as they carry out kind of terrain mapping using their sense of hearing. Bats, which produce a specific sound to conduct echolocation based on how the sound's waves bounce off potential obstacles, make for a good example of this. Curiously, Shermars, mighty though completely blind monsters, have developed a similar mechanism. They are able to locate their opponents by sensing the vibration of even the faintest sound wave. I wonder if using Ard is a good idea against them as a distraction or some shit. Maybe that's what it's supposed to be. On hunting basilisks, a compendium. In our lands, that is to say in the fair duchy of Toussaint, the hunting of basilisks has a long and storied tradition, one reaching back to the dawn of our present history. Attesting to this is a note written by one Zenon of Triton, a leatherworker in the year 1023. In it one finds mention of a commission for a corset to be fastened from hide of that winged serpent called Basilicus by some. See Vedetto Fiare manuscripts through the ages 1278. While lesser hides could come from beasts fueled by age or hunger, the costliness and expanse of this corset would have necessitated the skin of a basilisk taken in its prime, and therefore required a hunt. Without the engagement of a witcher, or as a last resort a knight or a mercenary, such a hunt would have perforce meant the gruesome death of the foolhardy hunter. Yet those adept at the task, witchers chief among them, hunted basilisks and their cousins cockatrices with great success, tilling their numbers till a mere handful remained. To give but one example, in the year 1100, basilisks of the Regulus platinum subspecies dotted skies all across our land. Yet, in the present day, only one exemplar still lives, somewhere out there. Maybe you'll find him and kill him. Forgotten species, the protofledder. If you take a fledder and magnify all of its most primitive traits, you will get a protofledder. This beast, the fledder's distant ancestor, arrived here from a parallel sphere centuries past, yet, unlike the fledder, has remained untouched by any post-conjunction evolutionary processes. In our time, protofledders are extremely rare, the most suitably adapted fledders having taken over their niche in our biosphere. Protofledders are thus lesser vampires. The massive wide jaws constitute their main weapons, their sharp claws coming in a close second. Similarly to their more developed cousins, protofledders rely on their instincts rather than intelligence and are quite sensitive to the scent of blood. All the usual means of fighting vampires, such as vampire oil, black blood, and silver weapons, apply to them as well. Me, My Panther and I, by Abigail Lett. As a young adept of the art of medicine, I was once asked by my mentor, Nurse Hatchet, to gather some herbs needed for poultices. I set out for the woods and sought ripe specimens, when all of a sudden a juniper shrub began to swish and shake. It must be a Leshen or another monster of some sort, enraged by my insolent theft of the forest's treasures, I thought. Luckily, it turned out the beast was no Leshen, but a little panther. Full of pity, I decided to share the bread and dried meat I brought in my bundle with the cub. From that moment on, I brought the panther something to eat every day, and every day it waited for me next to the juniper. A year passed, and the panther grew so big I was afraid to approach it, so I would just throw bits of meat and leave as quickly as possible. Then a sickness left me bedridden for a month. When I was finally back on my feet, I went to the woods, to the juniper shrub. My beloved panther, now as big as a horse, only roared from afar. I bolted. Panthers are beautiful animals, and they are quite fascinating as well, but I value my life, and that is that. I don't know if panthers are all that dangerous, honestly. I know that some wild cats are very cat-like, whereas others are very slash-like. Depends. Don't know where panthers fall in that, sadly. Well, sorry that I can't provide you with that information. Try Google instead. Anyway, that's it for the books. Jesus Christ. Goodness me. Oh, and the week has not passed in game, so I'll have to find something else to do.